Working Cows Podcast, episode 276. This episode is brought to you by the Ranching for Profit School.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, recorded exclusively in the C90 Ocean Minerals studio. Very excited to be joined and partnering with the Ranching for Profit School to get the word out about a couple of their upcoming schools. If you've listened to Working Cows Podcast much at all, you've certainly heard mention of Ranching for Profit. The fact is that many of the guests of the program have attended Ranching for Profit, and the experience has been impactful on shaping the way they see the ranching business. My wife and I attended, and we found it to be an incredible experience. Bottom line, if you're in the ranching business, you need to go. Ranching for Profit is the Masters of Business Administration program for ranchers. It is a must-attend for anyone who makes their living in agriculture or anyone who wants to make the transition to farming and ranching as their profession. At the time of this recording in mid-January, most of their upcoming schools are full, but there is room in the Rapid City, South Dakota school and the Grand Forks, North Dakota school in late January, early February. Visit their website to see the full schedule at ranchinforprofit.com. And fittingly, we are joined today by coincidence or God's providence by Shanon Sims, and him and his wife will be the instructor of that Rapid City school. And we're going to talk to Shanon about a recent course of work that he went through to get prepared for and to run a marathon. And I wanted to talk to Shanon about the benefits of physical exercise. Yes, that's true, but also about the importance of having hobbies away from the ranch, the importance of having hobbies that force you to get off the ranch, and why that matters and why that's important and why that's a good thing. So very excited to welcome Shanon back to the Working Cows Podcast. Shanon, thanks for joining me again. Welcome back.
Thanks, Clay. It's great to be back. I was hoping I'd get to be one of those repeats. I didn't know if it's going to happen, so this worked out good.
Yeah, very good. Well, you recently completed a running event, and I don't know what the official length of that event was. So what was the length of that event?
26.2 miles.
Full marathon.
It was a full marathon. Yep. Nice. So this has been an ongoing process. Just over a year ago, December of that'd be December of 21. I was headed down to a Ranching for Profit school in Phoenix that John Locke was teaching. And he texted me. He's like, if you're going to be down here, you're going to have to run a mile with me. And I was like, man, I hate to, turn down a challenge, but a mile sounds like a long ways. And so I started running a little bit, got in shape so that I knew that John wasn't just going to run off and leave me in downtown Phoenix to find my way back to the hotel. And, got that accomplished, ran a mile down there a few times with him, and then we just kept going and kept challenging each other. And then we ended up Dallas Mount, and John and I ran together at an event in Chugwater in the first part of September where we did a half marathon. And in typical fashion, that just wasn't good enough for John and I. And so, we just went down to his backyard in Kingwood, Texas, so kind of a suburb of Houston, and ran the full marathon.
At least there was no humidity for your first full marathon.
Yeah, right. 93% humidity, man. And when you're from McFadden, Wyoming, where humidity is unheard of, that's like, might as well have been running in the ocean.
Yeah. It
was insane. And John told me the whole time, he's like, man, that humidity is going to kill you. And I thought he was just trying to get to my heads to make sure that he could beat me. And so I kind of ignored him because I was also going from 7,200 feet elevation down to
sea level.
Yeah, basically, I think it's 50 feet there. And I was like, it'll compensate. And we showed up that morning and it was foggy, and it never burned off until about the last lap. It was 4 laps of 6.5 miles. And the last one, it finally burned off, but it was still probably 75-80% humidity. And I was melting. I actually am made of sugar, I think, because I was flat melting.
Yeah, can't stay out in the rain too long. You'll melt, right?
That's right.
Man. Yeah. So, talk me through kind of the motivation, the process. What's this been like? What's the value of it? I guess, pick one of those 3 questions I just asked you and answer it. And then we'll circle around to the other 2 at some point.
Okay. Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. So, the motivation for me, I was the high school athlete. And when I say high school athlete, I use that term really loosely. I went to a 1A school in Wyoming at Medicine Bow. So I was a, 175-pound defensive end and a 6-foot center.
And they probably
not
lied
like
about
it
your
was,
weight, right?
Oh, absolutely. It lied about my height too. Yeah. Yeah. But, after I got out of high school and through college, you come back to McFadden, there's not a lot of opportunities for athletics. And when you're young, or when I was young, probably, I thought athletics had to be competition and it had to be, team sports or whatever. And so I just kind of always looked for opportunities to get back into a team sport, and they don't present themselves very, very much. In Wyoming, baseball is not a big deal, mostly because when we can get 18 people together, not all 18 know the rules of baseball, and it doesn't happen very often, let alone 22 for a football game. I mean, 3-on-3 can be difficult to get together for. And so I always kind of use that excuse
in some places in Wyoming. So.
Yeah. So here's the kicker. The school my kids go to played 6-man football, but they were too small and they had to abandon the program. Couldn't get enough kids out.
Yep.
So anyway, I always use that excuse to not stay active, that I wanted to, but just the opportunity wasn't right. And so then finally, when John got a hold of me and was like, "Hey, you should try this running thing," I took the bait. And it doesn't have to be a competition. The competitive nature of a lot of sports just doesn't apply to running. Getting out in that marathon and whatnot, the camaraderie on that course, whether a guy was running a 7-minute mile or they're walking the entire 26 miles, everybody was kind of on the same team and rooting each other on. And I guess it's really kind of taught me the value of sport, beyond the competition and winners and losers, but just the accomplishment of being out there doing it. So I guess that's kind of the value for me is keeping your body active, and then building the community.
Yeah. Very good. And, that shared experience, there's kind of no replacement for that. And that, I think, on a real small scale, that's a taste of what those guys develop in the military, in a foxhole. Those relationships that are made there last a lifetime, and they're deeper than relationships you can find most anywhere else. And I think that athletic competition, obviously it's nothing compared to what they're going through, but it's an opportunity for the same thing, that shared experience, kind of shared suffering on some level, because I don't think there's really a way to run a marathon without some kind of at least a mental test, but obviously also a physical test. So, kind of talk me through the process that you went through for preparing for that.
Oh, so we actually, my sister had run marathons and she had a really good program that she shared with us. And so it was an 18-week program, running 3 times a week. And so you do 2 short runs. I guess it was 4 times a week. You do 2 short runs, a little bit longer run, and then the long run. And so it's starting out where the long run is like, I think it was 5 miles, and then work up to 21 miles. And then start to taper back down. But that's just the running part of it. There was so much more to it. The nutrition, I've learned so much about fueling my body in the last year that's not even funny. And I've always kind of been really interested in nutrition. I've got an animal science degree, and a lot of that is nutrition for cattle. And I've always kind of pulled that over to the human side and been cognizant of what I'm eating and putting in my body. But when you have to fuel for those long runs and I don't know, the hydration and the electrolytes and all of that, start putting that together, it's a dedication. And then I got to get back to, you're talking about the camaraderie. And I think if I had to do this by myself, it never would have happened. And I think Dallas and John have been huge support for all three of us. It's not them supporting me, but it goes all three directions. And then John and I with this marathon really supported each other and pushed each other. There was a lot of texts that went back and forth of, how was your run today? This is what I did. This is what I felt. What do you think we need to tweak? And then there was times where you just don't feel like running. You don't feel like putting in the miles. I had one run morning here. It was a 16-mile run. I wanted to get it knocked out first thing in the morning because I think I had a basketball game of Gentry's to go to, my daughter Gentry, to go to that afternoon. It was about 5 degrees. And I just did not want to knock it out. But I knew if I told John that I didn't run that day, I would never live it down. And a lot of your listeners know John Locke. They've heard him on this podcast before. And sarcasm from him is brutal. And so there was no way I was going to not get that done. And got the run done, got the trucks loaded and out of there, and got to the basketball game. But without somebody holding me accountable, never would have happened. I would have taken that one off. And once you skip one, I think you're behind the 8 ball then.
Were there some tools that you use that help make this a possibility?
Yeah. YouTube, man. And actually, John has been great about sharing a lot of information that he finds on YouTube. There's some specific not podcasts, but channels for runners and for marathoners. I can't remember the name of all of those right now, but we used YouTube a lot. He had a network of runners down there. I had a network up here, plus a chiropractor that is my sister, who kind of studies holistic healing, holistic medicine. And so she was able to help me a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of resources. We live in the information age, but there's books that I read. I can't remember the name of the book now. Yeah, this is going to make a terrible list on your show notes.
That's all right. You guys were using an app, right? Were you not using like Strava or one of those apps that keeps track of runs and stuff?
Well, yes. So not Strava. I don't know about the app. I'm not real technologically advanced. I used a Fitbit and John used the Garmin, and whatever program comes with that, if that's an app or whatever you want to call that. But it tracked all of our runs for us. And so broke it down, down to cadence. That's one of the things that I had no idea that they even tracked the number of steps that you take per minute, but they do, and it's called cadence. And there's kind of a sweet spot to be in. When we first started running, I was not in that sweet spot. I was about 145 steps per minute. And by the time we ran the marathon in Kingwood, I was up to about 170, which is getting up there where you kind of want to be. From the research I've done, it's somewhere between 165 to 180 is kind of where you want to be, is that sweet spot. And what it is it's just a measurement of the efficiency of your work. And so if you're taking big, long strides like I was doing, the impact is absorbing so much energy that you're leaving a lot on the table. And so, those trackers were great for that. Plus, if you don't have to pack a phone, in your hand and try to record your runs, there's already a timer built in, so you know how long. And how far with the GPS, which in McFadden, it's based off of cell phones.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of days my GPS was way off, but it doesn't have to be an exact science, get it close, and keep pushing towards your goals. And that's all you really need from it. You can get to, I think John has one, a heart rate monitor that you strap on.
Mm-hmm.
You can get some pretty high dollar tools, to take with you and get really scientific about this. But I don't know. For me, I like to keep it simple, and I'm kind of cheap too. So I don't like to spend a lot of money on it. And I don't think it's necessary depending on your goals. Yeah. If you're going to go out to try to win Boston, probably you need that stuff. But if you just want to get a chance to, go somewhere warmer in January and hang out with a buddy and make some new friends, then Fitbit is probably all the more you need.
Cool. So for you, was this kind of a couch to 5 or couch to marathon program then? I mean, not that you were in couch shape necessarily, but where you didn't have a hobby of running outside of before December of last year that you were building from there to get to marathon shape?
Yeah, I was totally couch to marathon. And I ran that first mile after John challenged me. Actually, Gentry was in volleyball then, I guess. And they were kind of on a long break, and her coach had asked her to run a mile. And so I was like, hey, can I go with you? And I thought I was going to die. That's a long ways, run a mile, especially with a 16-year-old girl that's you can't let her beat you,
yeah,
right? And by the time I got done, my lungs were on fire. And my legs were wondering what I was thinking, and I was kind of wondering what I was thinking if I'd ever do it again. And I pushed through that, and I did do it again. But it's interesting. I'm glad you brought this up, because no, I didn't go from the couch. We ranch. I'm an active guy. We're moving cows every 3 days. And so whether I'm doing that on foot or horseback or on a 4-wheeler, I'm out and I'm doing. I'm reeling up a lot of fence, temporary fence. We constantly are pounding posts in or rebuilding corrals, and I don't have to, go on and on. We do ranch work. And so I'm fit. I was fit, but this is an entirely different kind of fit.
Yep.
And I think it's really important to have both types. At least for me, it's been important. I'm so much more healthy now than I was just over a year ago. And I didn't realize it, but I've got more energy. I don't get sick near as much. And I think a lot of that is just getting that different metabolic system up and running, where I've become more efficient with my breathing. I've built more mitochondria in my muscle, so more efficient in how I burn through ATP or, burn through energy in the cells. And there's a lot of value to that. Like I say, 90% of ranchers are in great shape, but just not this kind of shape.
Right. Yeah. So I recently went on a hiking trip where I carried an elk license and a rifle with me. It was awesome.
And you still have both,
right? Yes,
right?
right. Yeah. Well, I've been trying to turn that into tag soup, but I'm told you just got to eat it raw. So, but anyways, so what I found, what kind of surprised me is I know I'm not in the best cardiovascular shape, but I do, a lot of the same things you do as far as moving fence and those kinds of things. And so what kind of surprised me is my lungs were burning pretty much all day, every day, but my legs were never tired. I was never out of gas in my legs. It was always just a restriction of my lungs. And so I think that kind of goes to what you're saying there, as far as like, I can get out and move all day, and maybe my feet are tired, the next day or whatever, but I can get out and move all day. But the lung, the cardiovascular fitness is a different animal. My favorite way to work out is to ride bikes. I used to ride a lot. I live in a neighborhood where I'm not safe riding on the road. Everybody drives really fast on gravel roads around here, and there's lots of hills and corners, and they wouldn't see you. You'd just be a grease spot. So I haven't done that in quite a while. But that it's a it's a process getting ready, getting prepared for something like you have done. And so, that's kind of, I think, my experience anyways in that. Was there, did you ever get past the mental battle of going out to train or the prioritization of this project? Was it ever easy, or did it remain kind of a challenge throughout the entire 18 weeks of the full on training and the past year of exercise? Was that prioritization and mental battle of, okay, I got to go, before the volleyball game, I got to go and get this knocked out?
I think it kind of ebbed and flowed all through the process. There was days where I couldn't wait to get out and go for a run. And then my wife was really supportive about it. And she actually bought me a treadmill. So during some of those cold days, I didn't have to go outside. But then you're on a treadmill staring at the wall.
Right.
And so there's days where it's like, man, I do not want to do this. On the flip side, I got home from Houston and I woke up, a couple mornings later and like, I want to run again. And so I did, so I jumped up and went out and ran. And I think that's kind of just a microcosm of the whole process. There's just days where like, what am I doing? Here's another way to look at it. Clay, is we went out and we ran the first lap of the marathon, and John and I ran it together and we had a blast. We were telling jokes. We were talking about, our experiences. We were meeting new people. We actually ended up running with a third guy for quite a while who was on a similar pace to us and getting to know him and whatnot. And we had a blast. And then the second lap was more of the same. And then the third lap, that I'm going to blame it on the humidity. It might have been my training wasn't as good as John's, but I started to fall back and it got pretty lonely, and then by the fourth lap, I think it was about mile 23. I'm like, this is stupid. What am I doing? I ranch. I don't run marathons. I don't run marathons in Houston, Texas. What am I even doing down here? And I went really negative. But I didn't have a lot of choice because I didn't have a ride home unless I got back to the finish line. And so I just kept going and kept going. And then I finally kind of caught myself and realized how negative I was and how unhealthy that was, that it was not going to help me get across that finish line. And I forced myself to kind of go positive. I actually, I hate to say this out loud because there's going to be people imagining it, but I forced myself to smile on the course. And so I was out there by myself smiling like an idiot. And it was the best thing I could have done to kind of get motivated again. And then by the time I got to mile 25, I was feeling pretty good, but I was never going to run a marathon again. There was just no way that was ever going to be something I would be stupid enough to do again. And then I got to the finish line, and John and Selena and their girls and a family friend and some other family friends and my son Kagan were all there to meet me. And as soon as I crossed that finish line, I was like, man, I can't wait to do this again. And I think that is a 26-mile version of this entire process. There was days where I was like, this is stupid. What am I doing? I've got so many other things I need to do. And then you check yourself and you get your mind right. And you realize that, you've got all these other things that you need to do. But if you keep your body healthy and you put in the effort to do this running, all those other things you need to do, you're going to be able to do so much more effectively because you've got the mental health right. You've got your body right, and you can accomplish anything. So that's kind of a really long answer, but I think that's probably the most effective way to answer is 26.2 miles captures running in itself. It just ebbs and flows. There's good days, there's bad days, and the real value is overcoming the bad days,
right,
and enjoying the good days.
So I guess that leads well into another question I've got here is, did you learn any lessons that will help you on the ranch, as a husband, as a father, or what were some of those lessons that you learned that will help you in those areas?
Yeah, I've learned so many lessons. Attention to detail. And that one, man, I hope John's not listening to this because feed his ego. But I went on vacation when we went down to Texas. We went down there and I planned on spending 3 or 4 days with a buddy, catching up with my son. Kagan went with us and just having fun. Plus, we were going to run a marathon. And so there was, it's right around New Year's. There's good food. There's a lot of new people. There's, you can stay up late. And I did all those things and it kicked my butt when it came time to race. And I think the lesson that I learned and meanwhile, John is taking care of himself, like eating rice and eggs for dinner. I don't know how he did it. We had fried food and he's eating rice and eggs, but he also finished 20 minutes ahead of me and it paid off. And I think that was the lesson is don't sell yourself short. I mean, this stuff is fun. There's no doubt about it. And if it becomes anything but fun, it makes it a lot harder to stick with it. But don't sell yourself short. Don't do 18 weeks of work and then go, I'm just here to have some fun. Stick with it and stick with that program. Trust in it and see it through all the way to the finish, not almost to the finish. So that's one lesson. Yeah, I can use that as a husband, as a father, as a rancher, everyday life, that lesson of pay attention to details and see it all the way through before you start letting up. It's like when you see the finish line, you don't pull up until you've already crossed it. When you're driving a nail, you drive through the nail, you don't just hit the nail. It's that lesson. Right. And it really brought that home for me. Yeah, so many other lessons learned. Just when you think you can't do anymore, you go and prove to yourself you can do a little bit more. And so I mentioned we started out with that training program of 3 shorter runs and 1 long run. And we'd been running a while, I'd been doing a training where I'd run 3 times a week. I'd run for an hour at a really low heart rate. And we can get into that later if we want. But then when we started on the marathon, it shifted a little bit. And so those long runs, when we were doing 7 or 8 miles, were not a big deal. I'd been doing that for a while and I could do it at a low heart rate and not that big of a deal. And then we started getting to those 14, 15, 16 mile runs. And every time I'd go out and do a long run, I'd like, man, I don't think I can go any further than that. Like that 16 miler, that really stands out. My muscles hurt. The recovery was a little bit slower. And I was like, man, I think it was 18 miles the next week. I'm like, there's no way I can do 2 more miles. Well, the next week came along and I went and did 18 miles and I got done with 18 miles. I'm like, man, that's a long ways. And I was tired and I had a 21 mile run coming. I'm like, there is no way I'm going to be able to finish 21 miles. And then it came along and I did it, and I got done with 21 miles and I got back to the hotel room. We happened to be in Moab coming back from teaching the Phoenix Ranching for Profit School. And we just stopped over there so I could get a run in. And so I ran the first half up the side of a mountain, it felt like. And then I got to run back down it to get back. But as soon as I got in the hotel, I grabbed 2 bags of ice and I had ice on one knee and on one ankle because they were just on fire. And I've got a picture that I sent to John in Dallas of icing myself down. And I'm like, 21 miles, I've got to do 5 more miles than that to finish the marathon. Like there's just no way. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I think that might be part of the psychology that went into me not taking it quite so serious, is I didn't know if I was actually going to be able to do it, but I did it, you know? And so I think you never know what you're capable of doing until you actually go and do it. And just when you think, there's the wall. Runners talk about hitting the wall. And I'm not sure I've ever truly hit a wall while I was running, but I've hit some walls after I got done running. But if you just keep moving and keep your head right, you can bust through those walls pretty easily.
Right. I think that, I could put a link in the show notes page, which will be workingcows.net/276 of this lady hitting a wall. in a triathlon. I mean, like physically hitting a wall, like a mile from the finish line in a triathlon. That'll scare you away from doing anything like this. She lived, and she went on to run other triathlons and things, but it was crazy. And then, but the mental wall is usually where you find yourself really kind of coming up against it in the challenge is generally with the mental side of these kinds of endeavors. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely 100% agree with the mental wall. Yeah, it's your body is capable of doing amazing things, and it's our mind that holds us back, and it's evolutionary. Your body is designed to conserve calories. You're not going to do any more work than you have to, and especially now in the society we live in, we don't have to do a lot of work. And so it is absolutely your brain going, hey, stupid, you're not chasing anything down. You're just running for fun. Just quit.
And you're not being chased.
And you're not being chased. Exactly. Yeah. And so it's overcoming that. And then while we're on the mental aspect of this, I've got to bring up the mental health value of running for me. And I think exercise in general is just, I can't even put it into words how valuable it is. I don't want to say I struggle with depression, because I don't want to take away from people that truly are diagnosed with depression and struggle with it. But I'm a depressive kind of person. And doing this regimen and getting physically active in this way has made my life so much easier. I'm just a happier person. And I think you can ask my wife and my kids, and I think they'd tell you, but I think about anybody that's around me can tell you just how much more of a happy person I am now. And so there's all kinds of science behind that. There's the endorphin release, and then there's a lot of stuff that they just don't understand. But yeah. Yep. It's huge what it does for your mental health. And then also with being involved with Ranching for Profit now as an instructor and a facilitator, we run into some hard situations where I want to be on top of my game, and it's really hard to do. But man, this summer I was facilitating some meetings, and there were some hard conversations that needed to be had, and I was struggling hard. And got up the next morning and went for a run. And as I left to go for that run, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get through today and do these people, the justice that I'm supposed to do for them. Ask the right questions, kind of help them with the right tools and facilitate these meetings. And by the time I got done with that run, I was ready to take on the challenge. I'd already finished something hard. Let's go do something else. Yep. And so there's another thing you can take back to life as a husband, a father, and a business owner.
Yeah, I think that resistance is common in all endeavors in life. And that the discipline of just facing that resistance and overcoming that resistance is, what it takes to be able to get through it. I mean, I think that those, whether it's a difficult, it just the way it hits me anyways feels the same. Like the resistance that I have because it's just not the way I'm wired, going out and visiting the people in my congregation in their homes. That's something that I experience resistance on frequently, and it's something that I have to work at getting better at. It's something that thankfully God has gifted me with a wife who's helping me get better at it. Okay. So I have resistance against going out and doing that. It's the same. It hits me the same way as the resistance I have for sticking to a workout program. It's that same, I feel it in my chest the same way, I feel in my head the same way. It's the same resistance I have in leading my family in spiritual ways and in other ways. It's the same, that resistance always hits me the same way. And so I think that once you can figure out how to overcome that resistance in one area, whether it's physical exercise or facilitating hard conversations, I think it'll help you overcome it in other areas too, I guess is what I'm hearing you say and how I've experienced it.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. And I'll flip the tables on you. I'm going to ask a question. What tools have you found to help you overcome that resistance? You mentioned your wife has helped with that. Do you have any other people or other tools that kind of help hold you accountable?
I think yeah, lists are helpful. These are the people that I need to make sure that I'm making connections with. I think telling other people, especially those who are in authority over you or have the ability to hold you accountable, telling them that you've got this plan to get through and visit, these people. In my case, anyways, that's a tool. And then, like I said, just like you said, Melinda supported you in this endeavor. Having support at home, they know I've got these goals, and they're gonna, help me get through it. Like tonight, I'm going home at 6:00. One of the members of the congregation is going to be there for supper. That's going to count as a visit, for this year. And then in 2 weeks, we got another one. 2 weeks, we got another one. So we just, that's kind of how we're tackling it together and getting through it. So, I think that's kind of how it is working out anyways. And then, again, it's something I'm growing in. It's something I'm learning. This is a newer endeavor. It's not new, but it's a newer endeavor for me. And it's something that we're taking one step at a time. I was recently having a conversation with a guy who said, this program that we've implemented isn't having the desired effect. And I said, well, let's look at it a little differently. Are more people accomplishing the goal that we had for this group now than were before we implemented the program? And he said, well, yeah, but I don't tend to look at the positive side of things. I'm like, well, it'll eat you alive if you don't. You got to be able to look at it and say, yes, more people are completing it now than when we implemented the program. And so that's a win. And next year or next quarter, we will redouble our efforts and try and pick up a few more. And so I think that one of the things that keeps people from succeeding in endeavors like this is trying to, and this is my problem, trying to get to where the people who are heroes in the space are tomorrow. Like, I want to be like this guy who's been working out 200 days a year, for 5 years. I want to be like him, and I'm gonna be like him tomorrow. No, I'm gonna start by working out for 15 minutes tomorrow instead of, he works out for an hour and a half or whatever. I'm gonna start by doing what I can do tomorrow, and over the process of the next however long it takes to get there, someday maybe I'll be there, but tomorrow I'm gonna do what I can do. So I think that's how it works.
I've got two anecdotes tying it back to the running to just put what you've said in a different context. Went out for a run during an EL meeting in Colorado one morning. John and I did, and for whatever reason, we just had a terrible run. We were really slow, is how I remember it. Or maybe I was really slow, and so John had to wait for me, or he was really slow and I had to drag him along, is probably more likely. And we got back to the hotel, and Eileen from Ramstead Ranch came up, and she knew we'd been out for a run, and she's a real positive, energetic person. And she said, "How was your run, guys?" And we were both like, it was stupid. It was terrible. We suck at this. I don't know why we even try. And she's like, "You know what I hear? I hear that you finished to run." And prior to taking this on, we would have never finished a run, and so it's those tiny goals. My one of my goals for 2023 is to run 1 hour a week. It's not to go set the world on fire. Just go run for an hour a week. That is as much as I need to accomplish. But it's still accomplishing so much more than I ever had.
Right.
And then I also want to mention too, you talk about, you're not going to be the guy that's training 200 days a year next week. When I first started this out, I could run a mile, but I couldn't do any more than that. And thanks to John and the research he did, he had found the run, walk, run, or walk, run, walk method, or whatever it is, where you break it down into little pieces. And you talk about feeling like training wheels, but that's what I had to do, man, for a long time to get my body up into shape where I could go do something. And so took that baby step and graduated from it, and then the next baby step was MAF running. I'm trying to think is developed by Dr. Maffetone. It's maximum aerobic. I can't remember what the F stands for, but I'm sure you'll have that in your show notes. But anyway, you run or exercise. It doesn't have to be running. Actually, you mentioned the bicycling. That's the best way to do it, but at a really low heart rate. So you're like zone 2 cardio, just barely. There's a formula. It has to do with your age and everything. Anyway, the number for me was 137 beats per minute heart rate. And I tried to stay underneath that. And once I started doing that, man, then I could actually get the 6 miles. And Justin Caudell, who's I worked with in a previous life, had told me, he's like, if you can run 6 miles, you can run a marathon. Well, I finally ran 6 miles and I was like, hey, I can run a marathon. And then it did happen, but it's baby steps, and there's no sense getting in a hurry about it.
Did you ever run a marathon, or did you ever run the full distance before the actual date in the course of your training?
Nope.
Yep.
Nope. That was the first time.
Yeah,
that was the first time. And I have to admit too, I still haven't run a full marathon. I did walk parts of it, but no, the 21 miles was as close as we had come in the training.
Right. Yep. So, you mentioned earlier that you are healthier, I think, than you've ever been, is the way you described it. Is that health as a result of, or maybe let me break it down this way. What percentage of that health increase in your life is a result of the exercise program, and what percentage of that health increase in your life is a result of the diet change? Or was there a diet change?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know that I can answer it, Clay. I would say the majority of it is the exercise program. To be honest with you, as we started adding up more and more miles, my diet probably went further and further south, just because you need quick energy. And so I wasn't a big sugar eater. And then I started eating more carbs, right? Not necessarily simple carbs, but some complex carbs that I hadn't eaten before, breads and stuff like that. So it's also relative too, as to what you consider a quality diet. For me, and what I consider a real quality diet, I'd probably gone backwards, but yet, learning how to fuel the body, there's a lot of positives to that. So I don't know if I can answer that, but I think you're spot on. It's a little bit of both.
Sure. So what were some of the benefits of just the actually having a hobby that didn't involve rolling up polywire and stepping in posts? What were some of the benefits for you of having something that took you away from the ranch? And this could be in just a general appeal for people to have a hobby away from the ranch too, if you want to take it that direction, but kind of talk about some of those benefits.
I think that's one of the big benefits, Clay, is it took me away from the ranch. As ranchers, we become our work. We identify as ranchers. And what this experience has started to teach me is we're never too old to pick up something new. And kind of learn who you are as a person. It was interesting on the plane ride down to Houston. I ended up sitting next to a gal who's 26 years old, and she'd been a track athlete her entire life and was done with that and was trying to figure out who she was. And so we were able to have a really good conversation because she's trying to move away from running and figure out who she was. I was using running to figure out who I was outside of the ranch. Yep. If that makes sense.
Yep.
And so I think it's just another tool of getting you out there. Number one, when you're running up and down Highway 13 in your, 7-inch running shorts and a t-shirt and some goofy looking running shoes and all of your hardcore ranch neighbors are driving up and down, honking at you, flipping you the bird and laughing at you, and all in really good taste. But you have to kind of have a little resilience to go, no, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to do. And I think it's going to pay dividends, having gone through that, when I'm ready to move into the next stage of life, whenever and whatever that may be.
Yeah.
But just saying, this is for me. I don't need to do it for anybody else. I don't need to conform to the status quo.
Sure. And I would say, just given, and I don't know how generous we are with this term, but given what I know about your neighborhood, you're in a pretty progressive neighborhood as far as status quos are concerned. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I've got to, just in case any of them happen to be listening, I've got to make sure that I'm very clear on that. It was all in really good fun. Like, right. I've got a lot of support. That's been a positive bonus to this too, as I look around some of the other people that are going through similar, because it's not just John and Dallas and I. There's others that are, spreading their wings and figuring out who they are, and they don't have a lot of support. And my community gives me crap in one breath, and the next one they're like, man, good luck. I really look up to you for going and doing this marathon and whatnot. And so I've got to give them credit when I say they actually did honk at me. I have been flipped off. I have been run off the road, but it was all in really good fun. And those are the same guys that, kind of sent me off to go tackle this. And then when I got back, they were the first ones to ask how it went. So.
Very good. Very good. Well, you've mentioned a couple of times the Ranching for Profit School, and you will be teaching the Ranching for Profit School coming up January 22nd through that's not a big secret, is it, who the instructors are for RFP schools? Before I launch
actually,
off?
Dallas has started advertising that on the website.
Okay,
so
cool.
Whenever you sign up, you actually know who you're getting into. So actually, Clay, day after tomorrow, we're going to be in Billings. Melinda and I teach the school in Billings. Okay. And then you're also right, that school in Rapid City on the 22nd. That's Melinda and I as well.
So the 22nd through the 28th, as of the recording of this and the release of this, I think there are opportunities for people to still sign up for the Rapid City School. And the next week, there's a school in Grand Forks that Sage Askin and John Locke will be teaching together as well. So I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about the benefits of teaching that school with a partner for one, but also with your wife for another. What's been your experience in that?
Oh, you think there's benefits to that? No.
So no, my favorite, I've repeated this joke so many times, and maybe I've told you, maybe I've said it on the podcast, I don't remember, but you said that, Melinda said when you guys came to the High Plains Ranch Practicum, she said that, getting ranchers to give up their haying equipment and their haymaking hobbies is kind of like trying to get a crack addict off of crack cocaine. And you spoke up and said, you'll have to forgive my wife. She grew up in Rock Springs. Her illustrations are a little different.
I actually remember saying that now that you mention it. So there's an advantage of teaching it with Melinda. We're able to give and take off of each other. And I think it kind of creates just a little bit different dynamic than you're going to get in some of the other schools. Not to say that that's better or worse, but it's an advantage that we have. I look at Dallas and Dave and John and the instructors before us that taught this school by themselves, and I'm just awestruck that they're able to do that. The amount of information that they prepare and present every day is incredible. And so being able to split up that workload is invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. And then at the same time, it happens fairly often. I'll be presenting some material and I'll skip over something, and Melinda knows that I missed it, and so she'll clean it up for me. And it might have happened the other way once, but I kind of doubt it. So no, that's huge. That's huge. And then just having the support, of your spouse whenever you're doing something. Yeah, we all married way up, and so having her with me there and supporting me, and then I try to support her some too. It's invaluable.
Yeah. Very good. Well, and there will be a link in the show notes page today, workingcows.net/276 to the Ranching for Profit School, ranchingforprofit.com. You can go directly there. You can go to the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/276, and find a link to that and make an appeal to you to get in on that Rapid City School or the Grand Forks School, either one. The Grand Forks School, in my mind, is a pretty unique opportunity as well. You've got Sage Askin, who is a sheep guy, custom grazing, doing a lot of really, really cool things. And his experience comes from Wyoming. And then you've got John Locke, who's running registered Brahman cattle, basically, in the Gulf Coast of Texas. And so there's just two really different environments there, and a really unique opportunity, I think, to learn from those two guys. So I'd encourage people to go out and get signed up for that and take part in it. Shanon, anything that we missed today, or anything that you wanted to make sure got communicated regarding hobbies away from the ranch, physical exercise, any of those things?
No, I think we pretty well covered it, Clay. I would say that if your listeners do end up going to Grand Forks or Rapid City, either one, I know John will have his running shoes. I'll have my running shoes. Bring yours along, and we'll see if we can find some time to go run. But no, it's been a fun time, Clay, and I think we hashed everything out.
Very good stuff there. Really, really enjoyed that conversation with Shanon. Really appreciate him taking the time, and would encourage you to check out the show notes page for today, workingcows.net/276. And you'll find a link there, of course, to the Ranching for Profit School, and an opportunity to get registered for one of those two upcoming schools we just talked about there at the end of the episode. An opportunity to get a very broad perspective from Sage and John from Wyoming and Texas, respectively, or to get the dynamic of a husband and wife team doing the instruction. So I encourage you to check that out and get registered if you haven't already. Coming up next week on the Working Cows podcast, really looking forward to, excited to be joined by Gabe Brown and welcome him back to the podcast. We're going to talk to him about the state of the American food system. Where are we? Where have we been? How did we get where we are? Where do we need to go? And how do we get there? That's kind of the outline of next week's show. And I think Gabe, over the last few years, has gained a set of experiences that have really qualified him to talk authoritatively to this issue. And I'm excited to have that conversation with him. And then coming up, Lord willing, in a couple weeks on the Working Cows podcast, I will be able to share a pretty cool interview with you. So looking forward to that, and we'll see if that all comes together. But right now it looks like it's going to. So I'm excited to share that with you, and we'll see you again real soon with another episode of the Working Cows podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.